Hey guys, welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I'm Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. On today's show, we're going to talk about Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson's availability of the season. We're going to do a temperature check of the national media. We're going to get a Trey Murphy rediscovering his rhythm against the Knicks. And at the end of the show, we're going to talk about the arena situation and some new details there. Adam, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson have combined to miss 17 games this year. Last year, they missed 90 games. Ingram has played in 54 of 60 games so far. Zion has played in 49 of 60. That really meant something to me the other night when Brandon rolled his right ankle. You know, it didn't look great. It didn't look horrible, debilitating. But like, I felt like if this was last year, Brandon probably doesn't return in that game. He's able to come back early in the second quarter. The Pelicans win a game that they really needed to win. I mean, the Knicks had everybody out, and it just meant something to me that Brandon was on the floor and finished and played the next night too. And I think, just those two guys being available has been a huge part of this season so far.
So we're getting this message driven home by everybody right now and kind of got it at the All-Star break. There's like, it's almost like the number of days since workplace accident sign in the building. It's like there's a wins sign in the building, and they know they only have this subset of games to hit the mark. And we've heard CJ call out the mark, and they're shooting for 50 wins. They're trying to get above the play-in. They're trying to safely land in 5 or 6. That is the target. And it's one thing to hear that. It's one thing to see performance get better and guys be a little bit more cohesive. It's another thing to see them give us something that habitually we're not used to. We are used to little nagging injuries being the reason that a guy doesn't play. I was cautioning friends that, like, look, Zion on a back-to-back since the knee aggravation, not likely they're going to let him play. Like, I don't imagine that's going to happen. Boom, plays. BI, drops the ankle. The last person I wanted to see walk out on the court, CJ, out there in a leather jacket helping him off. I'm like, oh, we're truly screwed. No, he's back up and at it, and he's in for the next game. And look, he's the one that had it probably going the best against the Pacers and kind of has hit a little rhythm here. He's got, we're going to lose it a little bit in kind of the roller coaster that this year's been. BI's really improved defensively. And the ask that was put on him at the start of the year, like, it does seem like he is starting to get comfortable with being more aggressive as a three-point shooter. You know how I feel about what types of threes come naturally to him. I think he's kind of got to hit the both feet set, like step back across the line, catch and shoot, or pull up in transition. Like, those are kind of the ones. But we're seeing him travel to the corner and not hesitate. We're not seeing him like just drive every single person that closes out on him anymore. I don't want to lose that in here. Like, we've done some Herb celebration, and Zion's clearly like finding some distribution stuff, and Zion's cleaned it up on the defensive end. Like, as much as the Zach Lowe's talking about the defense, like, how does this work? Like, is it really just Herb makes all the defense good? Like, no, kind of the story is like those guys were really, really substandard defensively, are kind of even. Like, BI's even positive in some defensive metrics. Like, it's better.
I feel like the part that Zach Lowe, who's the best doing it, he never brings up is like the Pelicans are just huge, and I feel like that simple thing that's obvious really helps them. It helped them finish 6th last year, and it helped them finish 6th this year. Like, when you're just really like got a ton of length across all positions for the most part, and you try hard most nights, and you're pretty locked in and you're cohesive, then like generally you'll have pretty good results, I would say. Like, I think that's the thing that he misses, and he always brings up. He's like, well, they're getting really lucky with opponent 3-point percentage, and now we're in a second year in a row where they're getting really lucky with opponent 3-point percentage. I'm like, it's length. I think that's at least my theory. Like, I think they're just like, they all have really long wingspans.
Yeah, it's that fact that Herb has like 11 blocked 3-point attempts. It's the fact that when Najee closes out on a guy that he missed a rotation on, that even if he gets there late, he leaps and his hand is still 3 feet in the air above the guy's face. Like, it's that even when the defense is bad, they're still pretty close to you. They're still making you uncomfortable. You don't get the kind of like the corner shots that like Shepard and everybody got in that Pacers game the other night. You don't get a lot of those against us. You kind of got to take them. You got to rush them. Like the makes we see like most commonly feel like the Kobe White, like 30-foot pull up from center court. Like, you know, I can live with that. For the most part, I just think defensively, they play really well. They play really well. They switch really well for the most part. Gets a little messy when Hawkins gets in there because he'll miss some stuff. He'll get targeted a little bit. A lot of guys do. Like Trey gets targeted a little bit sometimes. Depends on who's got the ball. But yeah, they're pretty big and they're pretty good. Like they're sound.
One more point on the availability of this season. I feel like so much like a media talking point is like leadership. Who's the leader on this team? And it's hard for me to listen to those conversations because I'm like, man, this is so dumb. And like leadership can be so many different things. But let me highlight an example of actual effective leadership. At the end of the last season, when all that happened, and you can put the blame on Aaron Nelson, who's not here anymore. You can put it on Brandon. You can put it on Zion. You guys figure out the blame pie there. But there was plenty of it to go around. At the end of last season, after they lose to OKC in the play-in, CJ gets on the mic. CJ had just played through, a finger injury that required surgery, torn labrum in a shoulder, on the court trying, not his best. And was like, basically, he was like, we're not going to do anything unless our best players play. Like long rant. I wrote about it at the time, tweeted it. I think a lot of people agreed. There's definitely some pushback, definitely pissed off some of the stands. The stand base really did not like that commentary from CJ. Guess what? That is leadership. Like fighting through stuff and being on the court. And CJ wasn't playing well last year. And I think the injuries had a lot to do with it. And he was getting criticized a lot. I mean, I know. I mean, he was just getting killed. Like, this guy can't make a shot. This guy's a bum. We need a point guard, yada, yada, yada. He was out there at least trying. And then he says at the end of the year, when they had this disappointing year, like, this team is not going to do anything unless our best players play more. Guess what? He was right. Guess what? The best players have played more this year. Is luck a part of that? Yes. But in my opinion, there's other parts of it too. Those guys, I think, are understanding a little bit. Yeah, we're not going to do anything unless we play a lot.
Yeah, the things are changing. Like, especially, we've talked about it. I don't need to belabor it, but Zion's finally starting to do some stuff right, and he looks a lot better. Like, and sure, like after the mess that was the back-to-back and trying to get in for the Indiana Pacers game, he definitely looked like he was running on fumes at times during that game, and he also almost yammed the rim out of the arena. He just looks a lot better. He looks like he's in shape, and we're hearing over and over again he's doing the right things now. And we're hearing it from, a lot of different angles, including CJ himself, who's probably been the most vocal critic. So yeah, things just seem to have aligned. They're saying the right
CJ
things.
has not been the most vocal critic.
Well, in terms of guy with evidence, not
okay.
Most vocal critic of Zion, but critic of what he's doing when he's not in the arena and has factual basis to do so.
Yeah.
Like he's told us when it's been bad.
Basis. Okay, let's not do
it. Don't derail me.
Okay.
So yeah, things have changed. Like they look more professional. Things are still messy. Like we're sorting out the on-court thing. Like it's very, very clear that the way that this season was handled is you guys need to get out there. We need to get this many games done. We need to get Zion in shape. And then as things have ramped up, we have seen the team change and the philosophy change. And now the ball's in his hand, and the ball's in his hand a little bit more. And now we're careening towards where we need to be by the end of the season. And we have enough time now here where we're actually going to get a 20, 30 game run here of working on the stuff that you want to use this offseason. I mean, this offseason, this postseason. So it's just nice to be here. And I can't get frustrated really about anything. Like I find myself even during the losses and stuff, like I expect a lot of losses. So I don't really get super bent out of shape about them as long as like the guys that were there played hard. There's really only been like a couple of losses where I'm like, oh, that really sucked. Like the Lakers IST games, the worst one still for me. And it will be. just because it was a complete punt of a moment, and that sucked. But yeah, it looks like some things are headed the right way. It's like it's the calm before the storm where you feel like maybe you can start getting like a little optimistic, because like we probably should now. Like the record is like what we're the currently on pace to be the second best season in Pelicans history if they keep this up. So we should probably enjoy that a lot.
I mean, to me, 50 wins would be a genuine accomplishment for this team. I mean, there have been disappointing moments, certainly, but like I think 50 wins would be like a big old dub. And I like that that's their goal this year. Like that is a real step to me. And, it'd be a real progression in all three of Willie Green's years. So like that's cool that that's the team's goal. And I think that would mean something if they got there. I guess let's get into these New York and Indiana games. 2 road games in 48 hours. Kind of a really quick turnaround on the Indiana game. They got stuck on the runway in New York. They didn't get into Indianapolis till like 5:30 a.m. My notes from the New York game. I mean, a game they absolutely should have won. Way too close at halftime. Willie Green played 8 guys in the first half. That really stuck out to me. Of like Willie Green being like, we need this game, and playing 8 guys and not even playing Matt Ryan in the first half. That changed in the second half. And Trey Murphy finally looking like Trey Murphy a little bit in the second half against New York. Scored 16 of his 26 in the fourth quarter. Really cool moment when the camera showed Willie Green like chest bumping Trey at half court and being like, welcome back. And then I think he said it to him in the locker room after the game. But definitely a welcome back game for Trey Murphy.
Yeah, it was nice to see some of the stuff that we're used to. You know, I want to temper it a little bit. The best play is like one where I don't want to give him, like, I don't want to go too far. He spun Bojan, like got him to jump really, really hard to his left, and then just took him to the hole. And like that's always going to be awesome to see. But then part of me's like, it's Bojan. Like he's getting up there. Like we saw a lot of that in Utah too. But look, I just want to see him make shots. I don't need a whole lot. I'm not one of the guys that's trying to tell you that he needs to get $30 million and that he's a future all-star and all that stuff. I just want to see him get back to making shots. I want to see him get back to making good decisions about when to take shots, not just always opting for the 28-footer because it's there. And that, like, it was legitimately good and he was really confident, and we got to see that. And it was just really, really nice. It's a good moment for him.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Trey Murphy as, a young player who I still think has a lot of upside. I think he probably is in line for like a really big payday, but I do think, like, for whatever reason, fans have maybe like overestimated him a little bit, and I think he's still got to prove it. It's just a weird thing, but it's been funny with him and Herb. Like they're so intertwined. Came in at the same time, part of the same draft class. They seem to be really good friends. We have a lot of positive memories involving both of them. I think they've both been really instrumental in just helping steer this franchise in the right direction. Like last year, Herb, I think, struggled with confidence a little bit like that. It was reflected in some of his shooting, and Trey Murphy started a bunch of games with Brandon and Zion out and played really well, and confidence was through the roof. And this year, it's kind of been the opposite. I mean, Herb's confidence as a shooter has never been higher. I think Trey has gone through it, mentally a little bit in recent weeks. And, I think the last 2 seasons from both of them are just a good reminder that a lot of the battle of being an NBA player is just in your head. It's really hard, and it's easy to get down on yourself sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, this is a hard game. This is a really, really hard game. And like, you got a lot of forces coming at you at the same time. Like, you're trying to play the game, learn the game, expand your tools. You got some people gassing you up. You have detractors. Like, it's just a really, really, really tense environment. And it's even harder when people see a world of potential in you and want to thrust that at you. And I think I try to stay conscious of the fact that, like, he was a 1-year transfer to Virginia during a COVID year, had a very explicit role at Virginia, and then was just in the league and was regarded as like a high-end talent. Most of that was because of what has not been discovered yet. and what his athletic profile is, and the fact that he's a solid standstill shooter. So the question then becomes expanding all the stuff. And this is something like I try to learn about like as we go. I'm not going to assume that like a guy's going to go away for a summer and come back with a handle. Like Stephen Curry did not have an A+ handle when he came into the league. He battled ankle issues for years. After 3 or 4 years, an elite freak of nature just drilled himself into one of the better ball handlers in the entire league. He's like one person who can do that. Some guys never add a thing. So like when it comes to like realizing potential, like it's more than just numbers on paper. Adding these skills is really hard. It takes a long time. And so like for me, I just want to see little things and like you stay in your game. I think that the potential people want for him is really more on like a 3 to 5 year arc, because it's got to be a little bit more of the handle, a little bit more comfort attacking at different levels, having more of a plan. I thought we saw some improvement last year around the rim. And then we've seen that like regress a little bit, like a little bit more of that, like getting lost in the mid range. I'm not sure if I actually want to attack the rim or not. We've seen a little bit of that stuff. So, you know, I just want to see him settle back into being the shooter, be the aggressive, murderous shooter. You know, when you get the late closeout or you get the unathletic matchup taken to the hole, and like be that, because you're top of the league great at that. Like there are not a lot of dudes, there are not a lot of teams that would not take you to do that.
Yeah, and you know, like something I'm always looking at with him is just comfort level taking contested and semi-contested threes, because I think at times, you know, he kind of only wants to take the open ones, and he's a guy where I feel like I need you to take it even when they're kind of close to you, and like you can just see that like Jordan Hawkins is a guy who immediately comes in and like he's just comfortable taking with guys right in his grill, and like Hawkins' gravity is just like insane. I mean, I would have to look up how many times he's already gotten fouled on 3-point shots. That's like a good indicator of like what your gravity is. But like people are really scared of Trey Murphy. But you know, my unscientific observation, I don't know, maybe there's like numbers or metrics behind this, but like to me, it feels like Hawkins has even more gravity just because he just seems more terrifying. And I think part of that is willingness to like take and make contested ones sometimes.
Yeah, and like running around, like doing the Rip Hamilton, Steph Curry act, just being on the move all the time. Like you've already got guys scared that you're going to relocate into a position. They're thinking, I have to chase this guy. And then his pull-up game, it's a little variable. Like he can do the JJ running sideways stuff, or he could settle back onto his feet and rise up. Like he can do it a couple different ways, and he's happy to hit the deck if you get close. So like, you know, he's just one of those dudes. He's an incredibly aggressive shooter, and you got to be afraid he's going to make it. So yeah, I think it's kind of natural with how much movement there is in the shooting. But you know, with him, because of how one-sided the game is right now, like he's really got to make him, or your offense really has to be, in order to feel that gravity, the offense really has to need him to chuck volume. And Trey, it's actually a little different. I feel like with Trey, because of the size, because of what you can get away with defensive matchup wise, you know, if he misses them, like it's okay as long as he keeps taking them, as long as you keep pulling guys out and doing your gravitational job. Like I can survive a little bit more because I'm not getting as picked apart on the other side. And I think there's little things in screening and little ghost screens and stuff that he does that I think are, you know, weave really nicely in with the starters and stuff. Like there's just a lot more pliability. He's had more time to work. So yeah, like there's pressure, but there's not pressure. Like just keep doing you, man.
Fully healthy, each team, who would you take in a 7-game series, the Pelicans or the Knicks? And I know, you know, that's not going to happen unless we're in the NBA Finals. But who would you take? Because these teams are getting compared to each other a lot. We talked about the Bob Myers thing on a previous episode.
Yeah. So I'll go fully healthy. So I'll give them Mitchell Robinson back and everything. So it's incredibly matchup based. Like I think it's a 50-50 series. For me, if Mitchell Robinson's there, like historically, Mitchell Robinson has given Jonas problems. And I don't think Larry would handle him very well either. So it would feel like kind of like the Knicks did last year, where it's like just a Mitchell Robinson devastation of like the Cleveland Cavaliers. I would be worried about that. But like player for player, 9-man rotation playoffs, they don't scare me. Like it feels similar. Like Brunson would clearly orchestrate them into great possessions left and right. He's going to score a ton of points, probably going to score 30. He's going to go to the line a bunch. DiVincenzo is going to give him, excellent backup guard minutes. But like
DiVincenzo, by the way, incredible 3-point shooting season.
Yeah. And I mean, he's just good. And he's been in the league for so long now. Like it feels like he's so young, but he's like, this is like his 7th year or 8th year already. Like he's a real vet, and he's a scoring vet that just came off the Golden State Warriors. Like got a little buff up and then comes over here and he's looking great. But yeah, I think it really it would come down to individual matchups. Julius Randle does not scare me. Hartenstein does not scare me. OG Anunoby, prove it. People talk about him all the time. Offensively, I hear a lot about all the things he can do. I will believe it when he plays more than 50 games in a season and does anything in the playoffs. But Brunson's the dude. Brunson can win a series, like in a first round series against a team that doesn't have elite talent. Brunson can get 4. The dude's just incredible. Like he's an incredibly smart basketball player.
He's so smart, man.
Him and Mitch Rob would give us a lot of problems. But I think we can
feel like, yeah, it is a really hard one. I mean, I feel like Brunson, like he'd probably
be the best player, right?
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like he would be my pick right now to be like he would be the best player in the series. But then I'm like, well, the Pelicans would have the 2nd and the 3rd best player in the series.
Right? Potentially the 3rd or the 4th.
Yeah, and I think Brandon and Zion, like in a playoff setting, I mean, I could see them being better than Brunson too. I mean, the Knicks, like depth and athleticism and talent at center does scare me a little bit. I mean, like Hartenstein is a really good player and he's coming off the bench if Mitchell Robinson's back, but I don't know. So before the Indiana game, it was an ESPN game as well as a Bally game. I don't know, Bally or Gray. But anyways, I turned on the ESPN pregame show just because I wanted to just see the things the national media was saying about the Pelicans. I always like to be tuned in to, the ESPN analysts and talking heads are saying Pelicans, and some of the ESPN talking heads have been in the news lately for really mean things Stephen A has said about Zion. We don't need to talk about that at all. But I have to say, after watching the 30-minute ESPN pregame show, I felt like they actually got it right. Like they all were like, yeah, the Pelicans are playing pretty good basketball lately. I think Zach Lowe made the point. He was like, look, Zion has actually been pretty good post in-season tournament. They're leaning into him. Point Zion. It's a lot of pick and rolls, 4-5 pick and rolls for the Pelicans. All of this is to say that I know the national media gets a bad rap in New Orleans, but for this 30-minute pregame show, I felt like they actually got it right.
It was good timing. So this was a great time to be on ESPN because Zach Lowe had just recently watched a handful of our games and written an article about us. It was a good time. We have recently gotten Perk to slide over. This is a nice optimistic period. One of the big doubts going in pre All-Star is are the guys still going to be healthy? Will they still be around? And they are. And I think that's one of Zach's historical big misgivings with us is I can't bet on them. They will not be healthy. They will not be there. Something will go wrong. And, instead it's more it's the real basketball questions for once. It's the fit stuff. It's can they run a consistent offense? It's can they score 120 points in a game when they need to? And hey, that defense is still good. And why? It's just nice to have the right problems finally. So yeah, it was a good time for them to see us. Zach had just been on his podcast, kind of confronted on a little bit of some of the article stuff and maybe some things that were a little bit missed because of the subset of games he watched. But he nailed the low pick and roll stuff with Larry and with JV, getting 5 feet away from the basket so that Zion takes one dribble and he's at the rim. They have a handle on it right now. So, we've been a topic du jour just right before we got on air. So it worked out perfectly.
And one of the things I'm seeing with the some of the national analysis of Zion too is I feel like the expectation of him was like, all right, all-time great player, or this is just a catastrophic failure. And I feel like the evaluation of him is matching up with what we've seen through these 50 games so far this season that he's played in, which is he's just been pretty good. Like the Zion that we have right now is, to me, about the same player as the guy who came in 2019. I don't think there's been a ton of improvement, but he's still very good. He's just, he's staying on the court and he's been very good, but not great this year. And I feel like that was kind of what I heard on the ESPN pregame show that for the most part matches up with what I've seen this year so far from him.
And I'll give a quick shout out to Schmidt on the Divine Intervention podcast on Ball Don't Lie. Kind of just spoke to, like, Dan asked him a question about Zion and why, like, is Zion like worse or better? Like, what's going on with the stats there? Like, what can you tell us about what's going on with him? And he kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, it starts the season coming in like frustrating shape, and he's not on the ball very much. And as he's gotten healthier and stuff, we've started giving the ball, and you're seeing the per minute production and the per minute stuff on ball is going higher and higher, and the number of drives is going higher and higher. And we're kind of ramping more towards the Zion we wanted to see week one. That's probably my only like little tiny underlying frustration with the season, is that like this could have been like the runaway celebration season that like OKC is getting, where you exceed expectations so much out the gate that you can just enjoy the whole thing. And nobody ever jumps on you when you get a loss. Nobody ever jumps on you when you have an ugly one, because you're just so outsized compared to expectations. It could have been that, but one of your guys wasn't ready for the load when it started and had to work his way toward that. And it took kind of an exceptionally long time. It also asked a lot of Brandon in that time period. It asked a lot of CJ in that time period. That's a lot of guys. And now we're getting to where we want to be, where clearly they've wanted to tool things towards. So, that's like the one thing, but like, can't be mad. Like, we got three really good dudes who can score a lot, and they can score different ways. When I talked to Steve on the last pod, like the big thing that you get out of that conversation is like, it's going to be really, really helpful when they get to the playoffs and have a lot of tools they have already tested and trust. They can solve a lot of problems. And I think that's where my first round confidence comes from. Like, aside from getting like a catastrophic matchup, we have the tools to solve a lot of issues on the floor, especially defensively.
Which teams are a catastrophic matchup?
I mean, for me, I don't want to play Denver. Like, I really just don't want to catch Denver.
Yeah, you don't want to play the team that has like maybe the greatest offensive player of all time.
Yeah. Like, I'm not as worried about the Clippers, but I am worried about the Clippers. Like, I do think that they just have such an absurd amount of hyper experienced offense that all creates and passes and dribbles, that I just look in the playoffs when it gets shorter and like the seventh or eighth dude, like the bench stops at Norm Powell. Like, it's going to be tough. They're just going to be impossible to deal with. But Denver still, like, we're finally getting to that part of the season where Denver's looking like Denver a little bit more, and Jamal Murray's back, and Jamal Murray looks pretty solid. Now all of a sudden instead of doing the thing where like, oh, is Minnesota the best team in the West? It's like, oh wait, Denver always was. We're getting there.
The only thing that makes me nervous is Jamal Murray's health. Like, dealing with shin splints like that worries me a little bit. I mean, it's just as great as Jokic is, he needs Murray. I mean, he needs a healthy Murray, or else there's just, I mean, no team can win a championship without their second best player.
But at the same time, Jokic will go and win you a first round series against anybody without him, and give him, another 12 to 15 days. Like, if he needs to, like, he
just asked CJ McCollum. He beat CJ and Dame with Austin Rivers and Facu Campazzo. I remember watching that series.
He's such a freak. But yeah, it's those two.
Yeah,
I relish the opportunity to play against OKC and Minnesota at some point.
Dude, I feel like that too.
I want to see them.
I want to see those matchups too. I feel like that would be the most fun. Like, I feel like New Orleans and Minnesota, like the chaos potential could just be so high because
So much length.
talented teams,
So much
um,
length.
grinder teams, somewhat. I mean, Minnesota more so, but teams that also have talent but make like really bad mistakes at inopportune times as well. Like I think it could just be a hilarious series. I would love to see that.
An average height of 6'8" and 15 turnovers per team per game. The battle of 16th and 17th offenses. It'd be a wild one. It would definitely be some throwback stuff. You'd have a lot of dunks and a lot of like ridiculous like fall away long twos. Like it just stupid basketball will happen if that matchup happens. But you may also see Zion put Rudy Gobert into the stands again. And I'm always here for that. Like that's the main reason I want that again, because I just don't think there's a single ounce of fear in Zion's body for Rudy Gobert. And like anytime I can see that, I want to see it. And
Brandon
I'm also
Ingram.
just like, I kind of want to pee on the Thunder. Like I kind of want to,
Mm.
I kind of really want to be the one that shanks them a little bit after, you know, all the praise and now they're so ahead of schedule and everything's perfect and everything they do is amazing. Okay. Show me Chet in the 12th row because he just got an elbow in the chest from Zion. Yeah. Show me what happens when we get into him a little bit. Where's the big? Where's the big that's going to stop us?
You guys think you're the
Where
team
is
of the
it?
future? 5 out. That's cool. We go 2.5 out. We go two and a
Yeah.
half out in our starting lineup.
What?
That doesn't really fit that well together, and we'll still beat you.
Yeah, that's right. You think you're going to the line 18 times, Shea Gilgeous? Not in the playoffs, dog.
Sam Presti, you think you're the best GM in the league? You don't even have a championship,
maybe.
bro. Did you deliver Cleveland its first championship in 50 years? Don't think so.
What a preposterous career Sam Presti has already had. I went back and looked at his draft stuff because I couldn't remember if he was the one that drafted Durant and everybody. And like, I'll take away from it a little bit in that when he made the picks that he made, like there was no way he was going to mess them up given who was on the board at the time. The James Harden pick is pretty good given where he was and who else was available, but like they were fairly obvious. But to have that and then to go from like a generation of like Thunder move to OKC and they're immediately great and we're building towards finals appearances, and then to just get to do like the long tear down, the semi rebuild with PG, and then the longer tear down to rebuild and then land in this. It's God damn it. Like I can't even be mad. It's like a Ron Burgundy and Baxter. You ate the whole wheel of cheese. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed.
They're a fun team to watch, man. I mean, Shea is. I mean, good God, man! Like the stuff he's doing with like the step backs from like mid range, where he's leaving guys like 18 feet in the dust, is just delights me.
His change of direction is the whole thing. His change of direction and his ability to stop on a dime, and he can alter his speed, and he's never uncomfortable at any pace. He's got ball handling and footwork to get to whatever base he wants. And like, that's the reason he gets the line so goddamn much, is because he gets to a spot before you do. And he gets there clean. He gets you up in the air. And like, one of the things I've tried to tell people, I have a lot of friends that think that his free throw trips are just going to go away in the playoffs. I don't believe they're going to go away, because if you look at the kinds that he draws, like, yeah, he may not get the head toss stuff, but that's like 2 of the trips. 5 of them are him getting you to jump up in the air, and then he's got you nailed. And that's still going to happen.
Yeah, he's not even as close to like a Trae Young level foul grifter. You know,
no,
not even.
He does it. That's the thing that pisses me off about him more than anything, is like he does the head jerky stuff when like he gets the real ones. I'm like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that stuff. Can I go backwards real quick? We didn't really hit on the Pacers too much, and I did want to just like put something out there, like while we're talking about availability and and the importance of the record and trying to get 5th or 6th seed. I thought we had every excuse under the sun for a lot of dudes that were really tired to not play in that Indiana game. I thought nobody would have blamed anyone for sitting in that game. That's Trae, that's Zion, that's BI, that's CJ. That was a mess of a situation. It's as messy as any of the ones we had. The Dallas thing where the turnaround was like 10 hours. we've had a lot of weird ones, back-to-backs. Really cool idea, NBA. We should never get rid of them. We never talk about that, right? Shorter seasons and stuff. Never do that. But they didn't have to play, and nobody would have blamed them. And I'm sure the team would not have given them any shit if they didn't play. And all of them, injured, tired, whatever, did. And it was a messy game. It wasn't perfect. They were sloppy. They turned the ball over a ton. But they also came out with punches. Every time I thought they were going to die, they just kind of didn't. They'd have there'd be a 12 or 15 point deficit, and they'd cut it to 5 or 6, and they'd miss the opportunity to cut it to 3. And then you're like, oh, well, here's where they're going to fall off. Here's where they're going to take the foot off the gas, and it's going to go away. They threw haymakers from the start of the third period all the way to the 3-minute mark of the fourth. And coming out of that situation, playing in that game, all those dudes tired, nicked up, all of that stuff, BI especially, to play that hard and to keep coming and to just keep coming and keep closing that deficit. That was a really fun game for me, even though they got like 70% shooting from the corners for Indiana. It just, that was one of the tougher performances I've seen from us, even in a loss. And I just wanted to shout it out.
Indiana gets it up to 20 early in the second quarter. And I think I was looking at that like, all right, like this might just be a blowout. It kind of is what it is. I really can't be that mad about it. I wish they would have played better. It was a 3-point game with 3 minutes left. CJ hits that jumper, gets it down to 3. They weren't able to get all the way back or anything like that, but they did fight. I mean, it was pretty admirable to see. And you're right. Everybody played. Everybody's going to be on the court Friday when they get this rematch against Indiana. This is the first time in like a month. Zion's not on the injury report at all. He's kind of been listed as questionable every game with like this left foot contusion. But I think it really is, a change in mindset with this team. It's like you're going to have to just fight through stuff if you want to get where you want to go. It's not going to be easy. Like it's uncomfortable at times. It just is.
Look, and now they're all off the injury report headed into this next Indiana matchup. Like, I don't think any of this stuff is a coincidence. I do not think this last week is a coincidence. Like, they are sending us a message that these remaining games matter, and they're not going to give any of them away. I'm really confident about the Indiana rematch. I think they're going to handle business. I'm excited to watch that game. And Indiana typically would be like a style clash that I'd worry about because they're a run and gun 3-point team, a run and gun shooting team at least. And I'm not like, I feel like we kind of owe them one and are kind of waiting for it and are going to be rested up a little bit and healthy. Yeah. I'm just excited to watch that one. I think we're going to have a bit of an answer.
All right, Adam, let's finish up with a little bit of arena talk. I've got a minor update going online tomorrow, Friday, on NOLA.com. Also running the Times-Picayune. I was at the LSED meeting today. It was the first one they've held of 2024. Basically, the news is this. A study to commission the viability of Smoothie King Center, something I've reported on previously, is going to begin happening in March. That is going to be about a 6-week process. And basically, when it is done, we should know more information about, what this like independent architectural and design firm thinks about just Smoothie King Center. The bones, the infrastructure, where it's lacking, where it needs upgrades. And this is like a necessary step towards determining, do we just need a big honking renovation of Smoothie King Center? Is this team going to need a new arena altogether? But there's going to be movement on that front soon.
I mean, look, we could do a whole podcast about it when it gets a little meatier. It's nice to hear anything's happening because I think there's a subset of fans that doesn't care and thinks like the arena's enough. But if you've been to any other, not, and like it's just kind of a mess. And if you are around anybody that works in the music business, like it's also a mess to hold concerts in. Like there's a lot of there's a certain size of act that just like doesn't come to town because they can't play the Superdome. And if they can't play the Superdome and the Fillmore doesn't work, there's nothing in between for them, because like playing in the arena is actually kind of difficult for anybody with an elaborate production.
But if you don't care, here's why you should care. I mean, because like Gail Benson is gonna, like she said, I'm never selling the Pelicans, but there will be a day when somebody owns the team post Gail Benson. I mean, there's a lot more incentive, for a team to stay in New Orleans if there's a good home for the Pelicans. So that's why you should care. And I don't want to, like,
Yep.
I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but like that's why all of this matters so much. Like there's a lot more reason to stay when you've got decent digs.
Yeah, I think people just tend to, especially like we have municipal challenges in the city of New Orleans, and I think that's the thing that overwhelms the interest in like arena talk, is people start getting into, okay, where's the money going to come from? We don't have any for anything, so what are we going to do? I'm obviously invested in it. I think the arena is well behind. I think we are, if you go look up the stats, like we've talked about it before, Lower Bowl is the smallest in the NBA. It's one of the smallest arenas in the NBA. It's got a terrible footprint. There's a lot wrong with it. I'm interested to hear what the findings are going to be if we get to hear that, and what the end result's going to be, because honestly, even if it is a renovation, like I'm not married to anything. I don't necessarily need to be convinced that there's a new that it has to be a new arena. Like maybe a giant reno works.
Yeah.
If they're willing to commit to it. Like, look, there are real challenges in the city in terms of doing a new arena. Like, this is not a city full of open real estate. Your best bet would be to blow the thing up and put another one in its spot if you really needed to do it. Like, it's a good location where it is.
Yeah, where would you have the Pelicans, play while that's being done? Like put them at Lakefront Arena, put them in the dome and drop a curtain. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think they would go in a dome. Like realistically, I think that'd be their only real option, is going to the dome. And you just like figure something out. They do creative stuff with like blocking off stuff. They'd have to get pretty creative, and I think you just kind of deal with that. I think that'd be the best option temporarily while you waited, but that's a holdover. That's a band-aid, hopefully, for a gigantic reno. That's the realistic option that I'm betting on, is that it's going to be a giant reno. I don't think the city or state will stomach an actual like brand new arena. If they do, it would be a huge stunner to me. I'd be thrilled about it, but it would stun me. But a massive reno that just makes it, closer to the rest of the league. I don't need to have the Fiserv Forum or the footprint. Yeah, I don't need to have the leading arena. I just don't want to be a dump.
And one thing the Pelicans people say that I do believe is their polling indicates that fans are happy with Smoothie King Center. Like the people who live here and go to games at Smoothie King Center are like, I'm having fun here. And I do believe that. I spent a lot of time there. I think people are having fun. I think it obviously could be better. To your point about the renovations, when you look at like, well, what are some recent examples of big old renovations? Phoenix Suns and the Atlanta Hawks both come to mind. Their existing arenas, both those opened in the 90s. Smoothie King Center opened in 99, so a pretty good comparison there. Both those teams pumped in the neighborhood of $200 million to do a renovation. And, I've seen games post-renovation, both those places. I think they're really nice. Smoothie King Center is a little bit unique, as you said, in terms of it has a really small lower bowl. It's pretty small. Like, can you just like increase some of the space? I know like one thing they do a renovation they might try to think about is like just increasing places where people can socialize. Like Chairman's Club is popular. Like, are there more places you could expand and just have more places for socialization at the game? But look, it's very early right now, and I just think that's something to keep an eye on.
Hey, love to hear it. Hopefully more about it soon in the future.
And the last thing I got on that, Adam, is the NBA's national rights deal going to expire after the 24-25 season. Like that's where so much of all this money comes from, is that sweet, sweet national TV money. It's looking like, that could potentially double. Adam Silver said, hey, look, once we get the next national rights deal figured out, that's what he's negotiating right now. That is when I'm going to look towards expansion. There's already been a lot of speculation about franchises in Vegas and Seattle. If and when that happens, all the existing teams are going to get a really nice payout. Like, let's just say those teams are both $4 billion. What's $8 billion divided by 30? Whatever that is, that's in like, I don't know, it wasn't an accounting major, but that's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah,
I'm going really, like I know I'm a little bit Charlie Day at the board here, but I'm just wondering, like, could that tie into whatever the Pelicans decide to do in the future?
yeah. I mean, yeah. So we'd be looking at it's be a pretty sizable amount of money. It's like it's over 200 mil per team. Yeah, it'd be. Look, you said what did you say? You said 200 mil is what those two franchises pumped in, and then the sweet nectar of the expansion teams would be around 200 mil. It'd be pretty easy to talk myself into. Just saying,
Lease 6
those
Smoothie
numbers
King
line up.
Center. Lease at Smoothie King Center will expire in June 2029. They hit the option last year. Going to be there 5 more years. Timeline kind of makes sense. So should have some clarity, a little more clarity on the digs. Like, I don't know, within the next year. But I've had some great times at Smoothie King Center. Is it immaculate? No. Is it a fun place to see the King Cake Baby hit the wipe me down after the Pelicans win? Yes, it is.
It's it's the thing where you go there and you're not mad you went. You know that your worst experience is probably like parking and trying to get out. And other than that, like it's never the number one thing you walk out of. You don't walk in and go, "Oh, this place is a dump," or you don't walk out and go, "Oh, the worst part." You know, it's a thing down the list where you're like, "Oh, this could be better." Like maybe the sound system shouldn't be broken. Maybe we could change the upholstery on the seats that's been the same for 20 years. Like it's little things. Maybe, they've done like little things with like the concession stands and stuff. For the most part, the concessions options are kind of crap. Like in a city like New Orleans, kind of wild. But, it's always like it's like the fourth or fifth thing, you know? Maybe we go the Atlanta Falcons route and you just drop all the prices to like 1990s levels to make people happy.
Without even checking, I can tell you what the answer is. That
No, it's not.
no, that's not
It's not
happening.
the answer. So yeah, reverse inflation is not deflation is not going to happen to concession prices. Huh? Okay. Well, hey, I tried.
Adam, that was everything I got. I'm excited for Pelicans Pacers Part 2. I love this time of year. It feels like every game really matters post All-Star break. This is the fun stuff.
Oh yeah, we get to ask the real questions and see the real stuff, and hopefully they put it together on the way.
All right, buddy. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk again soon.